What happens when a prince trades silk robes for flight goggles and royal rituals for roaring engines? In a time when Europe's empires teetered between tradition and upheaval, one man, Prince Friedrich Sigismund of the House of Hohenzollern, chose to build planes in his palace gardens, challenge the skies with his bare hands, and defy the very image of what nobility was supposed to be. Born into one of the most powerful dynasties of the modern age, he could have simply faded into ceremonial irrelevance. Instead, he became the prince who never lands, a figure caught between the soaring promise of aviation and the grounded legacy of horse and crown. His was not a life of myth, but of metal, mud, and momentum. This is not just a story about a royal who flew. It is the story of a world in transition, of privilege morphing into passion, of loss turning into purpose, and of a man who tried to outpace both gravity and history. On December 17, 1891, Friedrich Sigismund Joachim Victor Wilhelm Leopold was born at Klein-Glienicke Palace, a stately residence located in Potsdam, near Berlin, which served as a family seat for his branch of the Hohenzollern dynasty. As the heir to this illustrious lineage, the Hohenzollerns, having once dominated European politics and set the tempo for continental affairs through their rule over Prussia and later the German Empire, his birth positioned him within a world of privilege, tradition, and high expectations, where royal duties and historical legacy were ingrained from the outset. During his formative years, the young prince grew up immersed in an environment that blended aristocratic refinement with the emerging wonders of modern technology. He spent much of his time skimming through illustrated magazines that featured pioneering aviators and inventors, such as Alberto Santos Dumont, the Brazilian aviation enthusiast known for his dirigible flights, and Ferdinand von Zeppelin, the German count whose rigid airships were revolutionizing aerial travel. These publications sparked an early fascination with mechanics and flight, laying the groundwork for his future pursuits and reflecting the broader societal shift toward innovation in the pre-World War I era. From tinkerer to builder, the young engineer. By the age of 17, around 1908, Prince Friedrich Sigismund's innate curiosity had evolved into hands-on experimentation, demonstrating a keen mechanical aptitude that set him apart from typical royal pastimes. He began dismantling household items such as the family phonograph, a popular device for playing recorded music, to study its internal components, including gears, balance wheels, and other intricate mechanisms. This self-directed tinkering not only honed his understanding of engineering principles, but also foreshadowed his transition from theoretical interest to practical application in more ambitious fields: the palace hangar, building his first plane. In 1911, Prince Friedrich Sigismund's passion for mechanics found its ultimate outlet in the burgeoning field of aviation, a domain that was capturing global imagination amid rapid advancements in aircraft design. As reported by the Washington Post that year, the Prussian prince took to constructing his own monoplane in the expansive grounds of the Palace Park, a makeshift workshop where innovation met aristocracy. The fuselage of this early aircraft was precariously balanced on ordinary kitchen chairs for stability during assembly, while loyal footmen from the household staff assisted by ferrying essential supplies like oil cans to support the build. This endeavor marked his formal entry into aviation, blending his royal status with the gritty, experimental spirit of early flight pioneers, and highlighting his determination to pursue personal interests beyond traditional noble obligations. The Bulldog takes flight, engineering, and recognition. Prince Friedrich Sigismund's initial home-built monoplane, constructed in the Palace Park around 1911, underwent significant refinements and developments over the following years through collaborations with engineering firms. This evolution culminated in the creation of the Siemens-Schuckert Bulldog, a more advanced and polished aircraft model produced by the Siemens-Schuckert Company, known for its electrical and aviation innovations. The Bulldog was designed as a sleek white single-seater monoplane, emphasizing speed and agility with the royal crest of the Hohenzollern dynasty prominently emblazoned on its rudder to signify the prince's personal involvement and aristocratic heritage. By 1913, the design had progressed to the manufacturing stage at the Siemens-Schuckert works in Berlin, a major industrial facility specializing in aircraft and related technologies. 2 prototypes of the Bulldog were successfully built and rolled out from the factory, representing a key milestone in transitioning from the prince's amateur experiments to professionally engineered aircraft capable of reliable performance. In the same year, 1913, the 2 prototypes were transported to Johannisthal Airfield near Berlin, where they were photographed during taxiing maneuvers on the grass runways. These images captured the aircraft in action, showcasing their streamlined fuselage, white exterior, and royal insignia, and served to document the technical achievements while generating public and industry interest in the project. The photographs and details of the prototype's development garnered significant attention in the international press, leading to a dedicated pictorial spread in Flight magazine, a prominent British publication focused on aeronautics. This feature highlighted Prince Friedrich Sigismund's role as both designer and promoter, further elevating his profile within the global aviation community and underscoring the Bulldog's potential as an innovative single-seater aircraft. Aviation for the elite, a flying school vision. Around this period, Prince Friedrich Sigismund nurtured ambitious plans to establish a private flying school, envisioning an institution dedicated to training enthusiasts in the art of aviation. This dream reflected his desire to democratize flight to some extent, moving beyond military applications to foster a culture of aerial exploration among civilians, particularly those from elite circles who could afford the risks and expenses involved. In line with his aspirations, and as reported in a Michigan Wire story, a syndicated news dispatch that appeared in American newspapers, the prince actively advertised flying lessons through various channels. These advertisements were specifically aimed at individuals who would treat the air as sport, positioning aviation not as a utilitarian skill, but as an exhilarating recreational pursuit, akin to other gentlemanly hobbies, thereby appealing to adventurous souls interested in the thrill of early flight. War and brotherhood in the skies. When World War I provided Prince Friedrich Sigismund with the opportunity to shift from the leisurely pursuits of civilian aviation, symbolized by luxurious silk scarves worn during flights, to the utilitarian demands of military duty, represented by the field gray uniforms of the German Imperial Army, he embraced the change. This transition allowed him to apply his aviation skills in a combat context, moving from experimental and sporting flights to operational roles amid the ongoing global conflict that had engulfed Europe since 1914. In April 1917, as the war intensified with aerial warfare becoming increasingly critical, Prince Friedrich Sigismund and his brother Prince Friedrich Karl, another member of the Hohenzollern family with shared interests in aviation, enlisted in Fliegerabteilung 22, a German aviation detachment specializing in reconnaissance and combat missions. This unit was part of the Imperial German Air Service, Luftstreitkräfte, which was expanding rapidly to counter Allied air superiority. Their entry into the unit marked the brothers' formal involvement in frontline operations, where they could utilize their pre-war flying experience in support of ground troops on the Western Front. Throughout their service in Fliegerabteilung 22, the brothers distinguished themselves in aerial engagements, contributing to missions that involved scouting enemy positions, engaging in dogfights, and providing air support during major offensives. Their bravery and effectiveness in these roles earned both Prince Friedrich Sigismund and Prince Friedrich Karl the Iron Cross, a prestigious German military decoration awarded for acts of valor. This honor underscored the recognition they received from the military hierarchy, blending their royal status with proven combat merit in the eyes of their comrades and superiors. Tragedy over Flanders, loss and silence. Combat, however, also brought profound tragedy to the family. In the winter of 1917, during a mission over the Western Front, Prince Friedrich Karl's aircraft was shot down by enemy fire, likely from Allied fighters or anti-aircraft defenses, amid the brutal aerial battles in Flanders. Severely wounded in the crash, he was transported to a Flemish hospital in occupied Belgium, where he succumbed to his injuries shortly thereafter. This loss highlighted the perilous nature of wartime aviation, where technological limitations and intense combat led to high casualty rates among pilots. In the aftermath of his brother's death, Prince Friedrich Sigismund recorded his grief in a personal diary entry, poignantly noting, "I have never heard silence so loud." This reflection captured the overwhelming emptiness and emotional void left by the tragedy, emphasizing how the roar of engines and gunfire during the war gave way to a deafening quiet in moments of personal loss, resonating with the broader human cost of the conflict experienced by many soldiers and their families. After the war, grounded by Versailles, soaring underground. The war concluded with the armistice on November 11, 1918, before Prince Friedrich Sigismund could pursue further promotions within Germany's air arm, which was already beginning to shrink due to battlefield losses, resource shortages, and the impending defeat. His aspirations for advancement in a post-war military career were curtailed by the sudden end of hostilities, leaving him and other aviators in a state of uncertainty as the German Empire collapsed. A flying legend is born, air shows, acrobats, and nicknames. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles, imposed by the Allied powers, formally dismantled much of Germany's military capabilities, including severe restrictions on its air force. The treaty prohibited the production and possession of military aircraft, effectively grounding the old Eagle's fledglings, a metaphorical reference to the young pilots and aviation enthusiasts of the Hohenzollern era, like Sigismund, who represented the imperial legacy now clipped by international mandates. This clause not only ended Sigismund's military aviation prospects, but also symbolized the broader demilitarization and humiliation of Germany in the post-war order. Following the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which imposed strict disarmament bans on Germany's military aviation capabilities, including prohibitions on producing or possessing warplanes, these restrictions did not entirely halt private and civilian aviation endeavors. Enthusiasts like Prince Friedrich Sigismund continued to operate aircraft through non-military channels, relying on private engines and surplus equipment that evaded the treaty's military-focused clauses. This loophole allowed for the persistence of recreational and demonstration flights, fostering an underground revival of German aviation culture in the Weimar Republic era, where individuals pushed boundaries despite international oversight and economic hardships. In 1919, shortly after the war's end, a photograph taken in Switzerland captured Prince Friedrich Sigismund standing beside an LV LVGCV, a two-seater biplane originally designed as a reconnaissance aircraft during World War I, but repurposed for civilian use in the post-war period. This image documented his early involvement in aerobatics, showcasing how he adapted wartime surplus machines for daring maneuvers such as loops and rolls in neutral countries like Switzerland where restrictions were less stringent. The LVGCV, with its sturdy wooden frame and reliable engine, became a favored tool for his performances, symbolizing the transition from combat aviation to peacetime spectacles. In the early 1920s, Sigismund became famed for blending aviation and equestrian shows, turning air shows and horse jumping into public spectacles. Local German newspapers in the early 1920s extensively covered Prince Friedrich Sigismund's exploits, bestowing upon him the enduring nickname Der Fliegende Prinz, translated as the Flying Prince, or more poetically, the Prince who never lands. This label captured his seemingly tireless dedication to aviation, portraying him as an aristocratic figure who transcended earthly bounds through flight, and it became a staple in press reports that amplified his fame across the country. Two passions, one life, horses, and engines. In later years, one mechanic who worked on Sigismund's aircraft during the early 1920s recalled the meticulous preparations required for his performances, including tightening the bracing wires on the biplanes until they sang like zithers, a reference to the high-pitched, resonant hum produced by the taut wires under tension, akin to the strings of a traditional string instrument. This extreme adjustment was insisted upon by the prince to achieve razor-sharp snap rolls, rapid rotational maneuvers that demanded precise control and structural integrity, highlighting his perfectionism and the risks involved in modifying fragile surplus machines for acrobatic excellence. Amid the applause and excitement of air shows, which became prominent in Prince Friedrich Sigismund's life during the post-war period, he simultaneously nurtured a quieter but equally fervent passion for show jumping, an equestrian sport involving horses navigating obstacle courses with speed and precision. This interest likely developed earlier, complementing his adventurous spirit and providing a grounded counterpoint to the high-altitude thrills of aviation, as he balanced mechanical innovation with the traditional aristocratic pursuit of horsemanship. On April 27, 1916, during the height of World War I and before his active military aviation service began, Prince Friedrich Sigismund married Princess Marie-Louise of Schaumburg-Lippe, a noblewoman from a German princely house known for its own equestrian traditions. She was a fellow equestrian enthusiast who shared his appetite for risk-taking activities, whether in the saddle or in other daring endeavors, forging a partnership built on mutual interests in adventure and outdoor pursuits that would define their family life. In 1917, shortly after their marriage and amid the ongoing war, the couple welcomed their first child, a daughter named Louise. Her birth added a new dimension to their lives as they began building a family unit, while Sigismund was increasingly involved in aviation duties, blending royal responsibilities with the demands of parenthood in a turbulent era. 2 years later, in 1919, following the end of World War I and during the early transitional period of the Weimar Republic, their second child, a son named Friedrich Karl, was born. This completed their immediate family, with the children growing up in an environment shaped by their parents' passions, marking the start of a post-war phase focused on domestic stability amid Germany's political and economic upheaval. After the births of their children, Prince Friedrich Sigismund and Princess Marie-Louise raised Louise and Friedrich Karl in a dual setting that reflected their lifestyles. The paddocks and grounds of Kleinglenicke Palace near Berlin, their primary residence with its historical ties to the Hohenzollern family, and a stud farm in Mecklenburg, a rural region in northern Germany known for horse breeding. Here they specialized in breeding Trakehner horses, a warm blood breed originating from East Prussia, celebrated for their exceptional combination of power, athleticism, and graceful movement, which made them ideal for show jumping and other equestrian disciplines. This endeavor not only sustained their shared passion, but also contributed to the preservation and improvement of the breed during a time when traditional aristocratic pursuits were adapting to modern constraints. Throughout this period, particularly in the 1920s, as Sigismund's aviation career flourished alongside his equestrian activities, friends and acquaintances often joked about the unique atmosphere of the household. They humorously noted that the air smelled equally of aviation fuel, from the prince's frequent flights and aircraft maintenance, and fresh hay from the stables and paddocks, capturing the seamless integration of his two worlds, the mechanical roar of engines and the earthy essence of horse breeding, which defined the family's daily life and social circle. The final jump, truth behind the myth. In contemporary online sources, such as countless blogs and internet folklore that continue to circulate the story, a legendary account persists about Prince Friedrich Sigismund's demise. This narrative claims that in July 1927, the prince perished dramatically when his biplane shattered mid-air during an aerobatic display, portraying him as a royal figure who metaphorically flew too close to the sun, akin to the Icarus myth, and paid the ultimate price for his daring aviation pursuits. This version emphasizes his identity as an aviator, blending tragedy with romanticized notions of risk and nobility, and has become embedded in popular retellings despite conflicting evidence. However, the point where legend intersects with documented paperwork reveals a stark contrast. Dispatches from reputable newspapers at the time, including the New York Times and the Washington Post, provided accounts that diverged significantly from the aviation crash narrative. These reports detailed the prince's participation in an international show jumping event in Lucerne, Switzerland, on July 5, 1927, focusing on the equestrian accident that occurred during the competition rather than any aerial mishap. On July 5, 1927, during the international show jumping competition in Lucerne, Prince Friedrich Sigismund was actively competing on horseback, showcasing his skills in the equestrian sport he had long pursued alongside his aviation interests. According to the reports, his mount, a horse trained for such events, suddenly refused to clear a fence obstacle on the course, leading to a chaotic fall. In the ensuing mishap, the prince's foot became trapped in a stirrup, preventing him from disengaging quickly, and he sustained severe injuries as the horse's frantic hooves crushed 5 of his ribs amid the struggle. The injuries from the accident proved fatal. Prince Friedrich Sigismund lingered through the night, but succumbed at dawn on July 6, 1927, at the age of 35. This marked the end of his life, cutting short a career that had spanned innovative aviation experiments, wartime service, and equestrian breeding, leaving behind his wife, 2 young children, and a legacy intertwined with both mechanical and animal-powered pursuits. The discrepancy between the legend and reality raises the question of how the aviation myth originated. Early wire services, which disseminated news rapidly across international borders, played a key role in the confusion by mistranslating the German term Flugturnier, literally translating to flight tournament. This phrase was colloquially used in German-speaking regions to describe trick riding or equestrian shows involving acrobatic maneuvers on horseback, not aerial displays. Foreign editors, already familiar with Sigismund's well-publicized reputation as der fliegende Prinz due to his pre-war and post-war aviation exploits, were predisposed to associate him with airplanes and thus misinterpreted the event as an airshow accident. These editors, assuming an aviation-related tragedy based on the mistranslation in Sigismund's background, proceeded to fill newspaper columns with the erroneous account, framing it as a fatal biplane crash during the aerobatics. The error propagated unchecked through news syndicates, networks that shared stories among affiliated publications worldwide, allowing the fictional narrative to spread rapidly and embed itself in public consciousness. Over time, this syndicated misinformation evolved into a durable myth, persisting through print media and eventually migrating to digital platforms, where it settled into internet folklore without widespread correction. Further contributing to the myth's endurance was visual documentation from the prince's funeral, captured in British Pathé newsreel footage shortly after his death in July 1927. The film showed his coffin solemnly draped with his personal leather flight jacket, a garment symbolic of his aviation career, during the procession or ceremony. This imagery, evoking the trappings of an aviator's life, inadvertently reinforced the illusion of an aerial demise for viewers and later audiences, as it visually linked his passing to flight rather than the equestrian accident, thereby deepening the confusion between his passions and the actual cause of death. Following Prince Friedrich Sigismund's death in Lucerne on July 6, 1927, his body was transported back to Potsdam, Germany, in a manner that evoked the grandeur of 19th century royal funerals, though this splendor was now devoid of any real political power due to the abolition of the monarchy after World War I and the establishment of the Weimar Republic. The procession reflected a bygone era of imperial pomp, stripped of its former authority, as the family and mourners honored his legacy in a nation transitioning away from aristocratic traditions. During the funeral procession in Potsdam, the ceremony included symbolic elements that highlighted the prince's equestrian and royal heritage. Ex-Crown Prince Wilhelm, the former heir to the German throne, and a prominent figure from the Hohenzollern dynasty, who had been in exile but returned for family events, walked solemnly behind the gun carriage that bore the coffin, signifying respect and familial duty. Stable hands from the Glienicke estate led riderless horses, a traditional military and equestrian tribute representing the deceased rider's absence, adding a poignant touch to the cortege as it moved through the streets, drawing onlookers who witnessed this blend of personal loss and faded monarchical ritual. The prince was laid to rest in the chapel located within the grounds of Glienicke Park, adjacent to Klein Glienicke Palace, the family residence where he had spent much of his life pursuing his passions for aviation and horse breeding. He was buried next to his sister, Princess Victoria Margaret, who had predeceased him, creating a familial resting place that preserved the Hohenzollern connections amid the park's serene landscapes, which had once been a hub of royal activity, but now served as a quiet memorial site in the Republican era. 11 years after her husband's passing in 1938, Princess Marie-Louise, herself an accomplished rider who had shared Sigismund's enthusiasm for equestrian sports and had been a key partner in their show jumping and horse breeding endeavors, died, marking the end of the couple's generation. Her death left their two children, Louise, born 1917, and Friedrich Karl, born 1919, to face adulthood without parental guidance, compounding the family's losses in a period of increasing political instability in Germany. Legacy and memory in a post-royal world. Following their mother's death, Louise and Friedrich Karl were compelled to navigate a rapidly changing Germany that had little remaining use or tolerance for the vestiges of monarchies, such as hereditary titles, estates, and courtly traditions, or for the adventurous barnstormers like their father, who represented the free-spirited aviators of the interwar period, performing daring air shows. As the Weimar Republic gave way to the Nazi regime and later World War II, the siblings adapted to a society focused on ideological conformity and industrial mobilization, where aristocratic legacies were marginalized or suppressed, requiring them to forge paths in a world far removed from the privileges and pursuits of their parents' era. Prince Friedrich Sigismund's life serves as a vivid illustration of how Germany's post-imperial nobility, in the aftermath of the 1918 collapse of the monarchy and the establishment of the Weimar Republic, actively sought new forms of relevance and purpose through modern pursuits involving engines and adrenaline-fueled activities. Dispossessed of their traditional political power and courtly roles, many aristocrats like him turned to emerging technologies and sports to redefine their identities, blending their hereditary status with the excitement of innovation and risk in a democratizing society. The next time a trivia slide, online post, or casual factoid claims that a German prince like Friedrich Sigismund died in a fiery loop during an air show, one can recall the longer and more nuanced runway of his actual story. The boy who, starting in 1911, built airplanes in the serene palace gardens of Klein-Glienicke. The man who thrilled post-war crowds in the early 1920s with impossible spirals and loops in battered surplus machines at events like Flying Weeks. And the individual whose final descent came not from the stratosphere in a blazing aircraft, but from the saddle in a routine equestrian mishap. This fuller account grounds his legacy in reality, offering a corrective lens to view his multifaceted life. Myths, with their exaggerated heights and dramatic arcs, may soar higher in public consciousness, captivating audiences with tales of heroic peril and untamed ambition. Yet the real man behind them, Prince Friedrich Sigismund, still matters profoundly. His significance lies precisely in how he was grounded by something as simple, universal, and unforgiving as gravity, whether manifested in a horse's misstep or the broader forces of historical change, reminding us that authentic human stories, with their blend of achievement and vulnerability, hold deeper value than the elevated fictions that often eclipse them. And that's all for today's video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you'll always be in the loop. Thanks for watching.